Amid protests and a boycott by pan-democratic lawmakers, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying delivered his annual policy address today. The document stressed the need to uphold the rule of law and boost Hong Kong's overall competitiveness. The main goals of the policy blueprint are to pursue democracy, boost the economy, and improve people's livelihoods. A key livelihood issue is housing, and Leung today rolled out a new pilot scheme that will increase the supply of subsidized flats to increase home ownership among those eligible for public housing. Heavy emphasis was put into labour policies, with the CE proposing to raise the minimum wage to $32.50. He also wants to boost the labour force by attracting talent from overseas through several measures, but is scrapping the capital investment entrance scheme starting tomorrow. Leung wants to push back the retirement age as well, and he has proposed setting aside $50 billion as retirement protection for the needy, though there was little elaboration on how the money would be used. On youth policies, Leung wants to set up a $300 million youth development fund to support innovative projects. The scheme could help young people start their own business. And there are plans to better connect Hong Kong youth with their Chinese roots. The CE proposed renewing the curriculum content of Chinese history and world history, as well as measures to boost student exchanges between local and mainland schools.
Well, the Chief Executive is proposing a multi-pronged approach to solving the housing problem, and this includes a pilot scheme to give public housing tenants a better opportunity to become homeowners, and the Urban Renewal Authority supply of subsidised sale flats. Leung Chun-ying also said Hong Kong lacks developable land and that society has to make hard choices when it comes to land and housing decisions. Stephanie Choi reports.
Today, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying described housing as the most critical of all livelihood issues in Hong Kong.
What Hong Kong lacks is not land, but land that is developable. A substantial amount of land was sold for non-development uses, such as country parks, to improve environment. We also lowered the development density of land newly planned for development. These are the causes for serious shortage of housing supply that we have been facing in recent years. Society as a whole must make hard choices.
Noting the overwhelming public response to the latest batch of home ownership scheme flats on offer, the CE vowed to further improve the housing ladder. The housing ladder is made up of 3 rungs: public rental housing or PRH for low-income households, home ownership scheme or HOS flats for low to middle-income households, and private housing for everyone else. The policy address suggests adding a new rung between PRH and HOS flats to sell new public housing units to low-income families at a price lower than HOS flats. The government will also turn to the Urban Renewal Authority for the supply of subsidized sale flats. By the end of this year, the authority will be selling 300 flats in Kai Tak that were originally intended for the Flat for Flat scheme at a 30% discount.
We only got this today, so we still have to deliberate on how we are going to push forward with all these ideas of increasing supply for subsidized flat for sale. And what kind of subsidized flat for sale is also still under consideration.
To meet society's demand, the CE said the administration is working with public and non-government organizations to ease long-term land and housing shortages.
I find it a little bit disappointed is instead, CE did not say more about how to help those middle-class income people. They may not be qualified for public housing, but on the other hand, because of the high price of the private housing, they find it, very difficult to get a decent living area.
Ms. Chan, a nurse, says she and other young people can identify with this problem. She's planning to get married and is now waiting to see if she will be one of the few lucky ones to get an HOS flat. Ms. Chan says she will consider getting a discounted subsidized sale flat if it's 50% off market price. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
With the labour force expected to decline from around 2018, Leung Chun-ying proposed a number of measures to tackle manpower issues, and these include an increase to the minimum wage and schemes to attract talent from outside of Hong Kong. Owen Fung has that story.
The chief executive today announced the statutory minimum wage will go up from $30 to $32.50 per hour, pending approval from lawmakers. And with the population aging rapidly, Leung proposed extending the retirement age of civil servants while encouraging employers in the private sector to implement appropriate measures to extend the working life of their staff. Aside from increasing the productivity of the local labour force, the policy address includes a number of measures to attract non-local talent. A pilot scheme will be implemented to attract children of permanent Hong Kong residents who have emigrated to return to the city. And the government will consider drawing up a talent list to boost the recruitment of high-quality talent. Some legislators welcome the administration's proposal.
In order to move forward, there is a need for talented people.
But the Capital Investment Entrance Scheme will be suspended from tomorrow. The scheme has been in place for more than a decade and attracting mainlanders and foreign nationals to invest here. That's because Hong Kong needs manpower rather than more capital, Leung explained during a press conference afterwards. On the shortage of labour in the construction industry, the chief executive proposed to import skilled workers under certain circumstances.
Allowing imported skilled workers to work across various public sector works projects can enhance visibility of deployment, maximize the productivity of skilled workers, and control costs more effectively.
Still, Leung promised to put money into training local workers and give them priority in employment by setting up a dedicated recruitment centre for the construction industry. Owen Fung, TVB News.
Leung Chun-ying dedicated much of the beginning of his address to issues surrounding constitutional reform. Directing his comments specifically at students, the CE warned of anarchy, saying Hong Kong needs to be alert to misunderstandings regarding constitutional matters. And the day began with a dramatic walkout by pan-democratic lawmakers.
Slogans, banners, umbrellas. The pan-democrats protested as they walked out of the meeting, just as Leung Chun-ying was beginning his address.
We walk out on CY Leung to manifest our unreserved, unequivocal discontent.
Two People Power lawmakers stayed behind to continue rallying inside, and they refused to follow LegCo President Zhang Yuxing's orders to leave. They were eventually dragged out by security personnel. The CE, apparently used to the opposition by now, continued unfazed, even quipping about it before finally beginning his speech 12 minutes behind schedule.
Thank you very much for the opposition party members for the solemn and peaceful environment now.
In his introduction, Leung made repeated warnings for Hong Kong to stay alert. He said discussions on constitutional development over the past year have revealed that many youngsters fail to properly understand the relationship between the central and SAR governments, as well as constitutional requirements. He made a point to name the Hong Kong University Students' Union magazine Undergrad for putting forward what he called fallacies in the publication's cover story in February last year, entitled Hong Kong People Deciding Their Own Fate, and in a book it published in 2013 named Hong Kong Nationalism.
Undergrad and other students, including student leaders of the Occupy movement, have misstated the facts. We must stay alert.
Over the phone, former undergrad editor-in-chief Leung Kai-ping said he believes the CE's comments are an attempt to stop or scare away youngsters now in university from exercising their freedom of speech. He disagreed with the CE's view that the publications were promoting fallacies and questioned why the government is refusing to give room for discussion on these matters.
The chief executive also rolled out a number of initiatives aimed at enhancing education, training and career guidance services for youngsters. But in the wake of the Occupy protests, plans to review the curriculum of Chinese history had legislators concerned. Joao da Silva reports.
Among the policies targeting youth and education, Leung announced that the Committee on Free Kindergarten Education will look into encouraging kindergartens to provide additional full-day services and finding ways to extend support to needy families. On public sector primary schools, Leung said the Education Bureau will work to increase the graduate teacher ratio from the current 50% to 65% in the 2017-2018 school year. As for the teaching of science, technology and mathematics, Leung said curricula will be renewed and teacher training enhanced. Also up for a review is the teaching of Chinese history.
DPA will renew the curriculum of Chinese history and world history and enrich the learning experience. The training of teachers will also be enhanced. The objectives are to reinforce students' interest and understanding of Chinese history and culture and broaden their global outlook.
But education sector legislator Ip Kin Yoon is worried that this may be influenced by Leung Chun-ying's political bent.
I think about the CY, the CE is talking about it. It seems to be that they put all the emphasis on the political concern. And the teaching of Chinese history is only for promoting patriotism and so on. So this is not our purpose. We want to nurture independent thinking. We want our students to learn from history. The most important thing is we should uphold professionalism.
In the same line, the chief executive rolled out a subsidy scheme for Hong Kong primary and secondary school students to join exchange programs with mainland schools. The plan will also see the number of sister Hong Kong and mainland schools double in the next 3 years. Also in focus in Leung Chun-ying's 2015 policy address were community colleges of University Grants Committee-funded institutions. Leung noted their fast-growing surpluses and said his government will ensure that the money will benefit students. Juan da Silva, TVB News.
Well, in the policy address, the government announced that it will set aside $50 billion for retirement protection purposes. But as Rani Samtani reports, groups have criticised the government for not putting forward a formal pension scheme.
Scores of protesters gathered outside the Legislative Council before the start of the policy address. They demanded a universal pension or retirement scheme. Elderly people have been urging the government to provide more support, as they say the old age living allowance is not enough. But the CE explained there are divergent views on how to set up retirement protection and who should pay.
We're therefore not optimistic that the consensus on retirement protection financing arrangements can be reached.
But Leung noted that protection for needy citizens after retirement should be improved. He said he has asked the financial secretary to earmark $50 billion for future needs. The Commission on Poverty will also launch a public consultation on the issue later this year. But lawmakers questioned what the $50 billion would be used for and criticized the government for not providing concrete proposals on retirement protection.
We are worried that this is only a show and not without any substance in it. Because in the whole policy address, he tried to negatize the whole concept of comprehensive retirement benefit. So if he is not going to do that, what's the point of having $50 billion? What we want is real policy that is going to be implemented.
A group of people who watched the policy address together this morning expressed disappointment. 55-year-old Mrs. Wong said after deducting her rent from her monthly salary, she doesn't have a lot of savings left. She said it's not fair if the government only provides retirement protection for the needy, and said everyone should be able to benefit. The government has also earmarked $800 million for the residential care service voucher scheme. In addition, the CE made specific mentions to provide extra support for the mentally ill. More money would also be set aside for students with special education needs. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
As for environmental policies, Leung made a few proposals today. In the areas of worse roadside air pollution, including Central, Causeway Bay and Mong Kok, the CE wants to put in low-emission zones at the end of the year, where bus companies can only deploy low-emission buses. Single-deck electric buses will be tried out mid-2015. The government will also table legislation that restricts ocean-going vessels berthing at Hong Kong ports to switch to low-sulfur diesel. The chief executive also announced a new 5% power-saving target for all government buildings in the coming 5 years. It will conduct energy audits for major government buildings to see how they can become more low-carbon.
And in an unexpected move, the CE also proposed raises for district councillors today. Leung Chun-ying suggested increasing district councillors' honorarium by 15% from some $23,000 to more than $26,000 a month. He also proposed giving each council member a new $10,000 provision per term to cover expenses for duty visits. Leung did not explain why he proposed the raise in the policy address.